Buonasera.
Avete capito quindi che questo
So
evento
you understood this event will be translated simultaneously.
sia quelli che stanno ascoltando
In this way, both
sia quelli
people
che
that are following
rappresentano la giuria,
live and people that are here representing the jury,
una traduzione corretta di quello
everyone
che
can have the correct translation of what we are saying. So the suggestion is to speak slowly and clearly, but also to be concise, because we don't have such a long time and everyone should have each space. So I will introduce you the Emina de Mezu, that is Veronica Dini. She is specialized in mediation of environment mediation. She has a long experience. Although she is very young in mediation in situations that are really complex, in particularly in Italy, but not only in Italy. She works especially in Milan. I'm Paolo Roggero. I think you know me. And now I give the floor to Veronica Dini. She's explaining the trial, and then we have 2 videos, and then we will begin to the most interesting part. So I give you the floor, Veronica. Thank you very much, Paolo. Good evening to all of you. Thank you for having me here. Okay, here we go.
Loro sentono? Come mai non ci sentono?
Si sente bene? Ok.
Vediamo se ci sentono anche.
So let's see if they can hear us.
Fate un cenno.
So, good evening. I want to thank you all. I want to thank Paolo Roggero, but also all of you for the organization and the invitation to this event that is really particular. I deal with management of conflicts, environmental conflicts, and this is a case a situation like an experiment that is really interesting and particular for 2 reasons. One reason is substantial, the other one is formal. Once that we have a particular situation because we speak about a topic that before dealing with it and face it, we have to know it in details. That is the climate change and the effects on the areas, on the environment. We know it generally. Of course, you know it specifically in your area. But it's a topic that we must know together, because sometimes some people know just a little bit of the phenomenon, but we have to know it in his totality. And after a debate, after the sharing, we will know it better. So today we are tackling the climate change, and we are trying to understand it in each point of view and every point of view of the people that are participating today with us. So we will analyze a case, a conflict case, and we will see how this conflict is. It's not a conflict between two parties, but between two scenarios or like parts of development. And this is very urgent, it's important, it's significant. It's more significant to tackle only small groups. And this is a model we can use, we can replicate, we can use it in other ways and also in other parts. So it's important to tackle situations like these ones, because it's clear that the management, the way in which we face the damages of climate change, these ways are technical, scientific, legal in some points of view, but the general point is a cultural, social aspect, the way we understand our present and our future. And also the times, and because we have the future generations that must intervene also here in the debate. How can we tackle this topic? In a brief simulation, an experiment of this procedure, you know it for sure, la ragioni, and this is a mediation process of conflicts, traditional in Sardinia. It was experimented and it was used until the 60s in the north of Sardinia. Then it was a bit lost, but it's really interesting. It's an interesting way because it gives value to hearing, listening to other people, something that is necessary. We have some schedule, but it will be important to hear everyone, what we can do afterwards. So we will try to listen to everybody and also to intervene, to explain. Everyone will explain his point of view. It will be technical, professional, but also like a point of view of experiences, what we know of this particular area, and then we will recognize which type of conflict situation it is, and in the end, our goal will be to find a solution, to find a vision, in order to have some suggestions. So I would say we can now begin. We can begin with our experiment, with our videos maybe. Thank you very much.
Sì, appunto, io chiedo all'inizio di
at the beginning, I wanted to show you this video. It's about some interviews that were made in this project of the environmental transition. It's called Sustain Adapt. And it deals with the integration between development, sustainable development, and adaptation to climate change. The people that will talk are the main responsible people for some projects. We have developed more than 180 projects, and here we just have few projects and some interviews that will explain some aspects that emerged from this analysis. So we can hear this video now.
L'hai condiviso lo schermo, così vedono anche da casa. È un po' di tecnologia. Adesso il problema è fare perché non si sente l'audio? L'altoparlante è spento però adesso, Prova. No, non si sente.
And I'm the president of the Association Manarola Onlus non-profit. We are developing a project with the Parco Cinque Terre.
Forse ci riusciamo,
So I'm Fabrizio Cappellieri. I'm the president of the foundation Manarola Cinque Terre, non-profit. We are developing a project with the Parc Cinque Terre. And this project is called Stone Walls for Life. I'm George. I just finished my PhD at the University of Padova. And during my PhD, I was working with Horizon 2020. I'm Valentina, and I'm responsible for research and development in Ferti Global. This is an Italian firm dealing with biostimulators in Tuscany. And we are dealing with a project that Envision. We want to find fertilizers and biostimulators. I'm working in the Aosta Valley, and we are dealing with climate change in an area near Manarola. We have some cultivation projects, and we want to guarantee with cultivation in the terraces, we want to guarantee maintenance that can continue. We want to encourage the cultivation, and we want to develop some projects that are already there and to make them better. Agriculture can be positive in order to reduce pesticides, dealing with technology. So in this project we are transferring the research into real use. In the last years we were in the pastoral project, and we were trying to make an analysis between costs and benefits for animal husbandry and pastoralism. We have some difficulties, and they are linked to the complexity, the management, and the times of the public administration. We have to wait a lot of time, we have difficulties, and this is linked to the rights problems. In the majority of cases that were implemented at local scale, we have to meet the needs of the territory. One thing that is interesting is that there is a lack of partnerships between the public and private sector, so maybe there is a problem of communication between different actors. Beyond the research, we have to do something with the population, but also with the stakeholders. We have to organize meetings, events that are specifically for the population. I think the main obstacle that prevent us to deal with the public sector aspect. What we must do now is to anticipate adaptation measures, and this anthropological is really difficult. And it's more difficult with mountain peoples, because these peoples are used to resisting. So there is awareness, but it's difficult to act. And we have seen it in many sectors that are very different. They wait until we have an emergency, and everyone knows it. But in this moment, this is the main obstacle, that is not measuring or like funding the grants, because there are grants, but we have to put it in the first place of the political agenda.
So we heard, even not very well. I'd like to summarize. There were 4 projects in 4 different Italian contexts, very different to one another, from the Cinque Terre in Liguria to the Alps in Valle d'Aosta, and through European funds aimed at studying innovation. What came out from all 4 approaches. On the one hand, how the time and complexity of public administration are an obstacle to a large-scale introduction of innovation. So the shift from the prototype to large scale is sometimes really difficult. And I think this is an experience that you probably had in your own in A.R.P.A.S. Probably not the authorization as such, but the time required to get the authorization make innovation obsolete, and so companies are no longer competitive. The other aspect stressed by the researchers is the ever-increasing need to have a partnership between public and private, not considering public and private as two different alternatives. So a private-public partnership is required, and the technological innovation that comes out of scientific research shouldn't be made for the companies, but with the companies, and this is another aspect that came out of these interviews. And last but not least, what the manager of the LIFE project, the Pastor Alp, that regards the pastures in the Alps, he mentioned an obstacle that they found, and that was the understanding that in order to adapt to climate change, we need to anticipate it, because if we wait to see the effects of climate change, it is already too late to intervene. So we need to act in advance, we need to forecast and foresee future actions, and those who can do that can get opportunities. If we wait for the effects, then the costs are much higher. So this is the summary of the four interventions. And then we have a short video by Antonio Solinas. He's a manager of Abinsula, a Sardinian company with branches in Italy and Spain that works with technology, also with applications in agriculture, with over 80 employees, and a company which is growing very fast. And I think his testimony is very interesting for the next discussion that we're going to have. I'd like to welcome the partners. My name is Antonio Solinas. I'm responsible for the research of this company that was founded 10 years ago, and now it's a collection of companies. We have over 160 employees, and we work on software development, especially embedded software, which are integrated in objects, in tractors and airplanes. Abisma wants to work with change, not only climate change, but change overall. We had a change with a great revolution in the software programming, especially with connected things. So we have the aim of creating native systems, and we are exploiting this change to use, for instance, Linux, and to embed it in objects, in things, for instance, tractors, cars, and airplanes. And so adapting to change is crucial, and what we've done in the last 10 years was to try and anticipate the needs of the market and try to identify the changes in society in order to understand what we could offer to the market and adapt our skills to the change that was happening. Change had an acceleration, especially in in terms of technological innovation. We dealt with agriculture, but also many other fields. So this was our exploiting the change, or I'd say our adaptation to change. Our strategy is to foresee the future with a double aim. On the one hand, we want to first we write the project and we try to anticipate the innovation needed for the near future, and we try to write collaborative projects with other partners, and I think a lot of our marketing opportunities were born like that. For instance, in research and development, we use the development platform for precision agriculture using drones, sensors and satellites. And we try always to get new partners. A new partner that came to us with an Erasmus project and now is our partner in this project. So networking is crucial to be able to develop the companies and adapt to change. That is, be able all together what is going to happen. Thank you for the time, and enjoy your proceedings. I think this testimony was very useful to introduce the topic we are going to discuss today. The first question that I'd like to ask my witnesses, we have many here. I'd like to invite the representative of the municipality of Arborea, the local minister for agriculture, on behalf of the mayor. We are guests, and it's nice to give the floor to him first of all. So I'd like to ask him, what is the current situation in Arborea? From your point of view, what are the strengths and weaknesses of this Arborea system? Can I pull the cable? No, you shouldn't.
Prova? Sì, se mi metto di là. Buonasera a tutti.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Professor Roggero said, my name is Gianni Sardo, and I have the burden to work for the agriculture sector in Arborea. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the mayor, who is currently in Brussels to discuss about the resilience plan. And I'd like to welcome you on the behalf of the whole administration. I don't know if I can speak slowly as I was asked. Sometimes for me it is difficult to speak slowly. First of all, I'd like to say that we're here talking about climate change, which is a plague causing major mayhem and problems, especially to the poorest areas of the world, which are least ready to counter the climate change effects. But there's another problem that risks shadowing climate change, and that is the economic situation. The agriculture and farming are living the increase of costs of raw material, energy and fodder is threatening dramatically the farming community, and if there's no economic sustainability, this community may not survive. Having said this, and going back to the professor's question, I think we live and work in an extraordinary territory. And we cannot deny that climate change has been happening, and I am old enough to say that seasons are not no longer the same, and climate change is objective. And I'd like to give you an anecdote. Before going to sleep, I go to see my stables. I'm a farmer, and at midnight the temperature was 29.4 degrees, and in over 60 years of life I've never seen such a high temperature. 29.4 degrees Celsius were never recorded, but our system, our local system, is surviving this. Probably those who planned it over 100 years ago did it well. The strength of Arborea is the water management, and because, as you've seen, the rain were mostly in October and November, and our system, despite its problem, was able to survive the floods. Of course, the consortium for the remediation of Arborea worked well. We have water for irrigation, and this mitigates climate change, and I think the remediation consortia will have a major role, especially in the future. What is our local administration doing? Only last Friday, to do our part, the local council gave the mandate to the mayor to subscribe the new pact among mayors for climate and energy. What is it? In 2018, the European Union, aiming at involving the local administration in order to reduce the emissions of CO2 by 20% by 2020, and so the European Union asked the local communities to subscribe this pact, and this mayor pact set a more ambitious target, that is reducing these green gas emissions by 40% by 2030. This pact is on a voluntary basis, and the administration have to draft a plan for energy which contain the actions foreseen by the administrations in order to mitigate green gas emissions. The municipality of Arborea also became a member of Sustainable Municipalities, and it was one of the first to support it. With another deliberation, the municipality created the Center for Sustainability and Education and Environmental Education, and the municipality has the objective of creating an energy community. Excuse me. And so I got lost.
Su questo l'amministrazione ha in essere un percorso di animazione partecipativa.
Administration wants to involve the population, aiming at the participatory democracy. So in order to conclude, everyone has to do their part if we want the future generation to access resources like we could
In questo senso,
in the past. In this sense, climate change are questioning us, and we need to create the conditions so that development is not only environmentally sustainable but also economically and socially sustainable. And so, in conclusion, I'd like to ask the university, and in particular the professor, for his attention to our territory, and we are available for as much as we can, and we want to contribute to this. Thank you very much. If I may, I'd like to invite the region of Sardinia, since we are in Sardinia, and in particular the Agriculture Department. Here we have the regional minister. I'd like to ask you, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the system, the regional system? Good evening, good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me. This discussion is very interesting, especially as regards the participation of various stakeholders, everyone with their own point of view. But everything helps to understand the whole picture. So the point of view of the regional Ministry for Agriculture. First of all, I'd like to give you some numbers that summarize our regional policy, but also the European policy at large. With the national programming plan for 2014-2022, we allocated about 42% to environmental topics, but the same amount of resources were allocated to competitiveness and improvement of productivity in agriculture. So about 85% of the resources were absorbed by these two main topics, and this shows, as the previous speaker said, to have an environmental sustainability and climate sustainability, we also need social and economic sustainability. The two aspects cannot be separated, and we're seeing it right now. A lack of planning or correct planning, the needs of society in terms of raw materials and agricultural resources and produces needed to support the population, because that is sustainability, is causing major problems, especially in the very particular situation we are living in for all the reasons that we know. And the origin of this situation is probably a careless planning in terms of sustainability of Italian agriculture. And this also goes for Sardinia too. With the new national plans, the European Union focused even more on environmental topics, for instance, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, protection of soil, and environmental protection. These are the key topics for the new CAP. But just some food for thought for everybody. I'd like to remind you that France, which is the biggest European producer of organic wheat, has yields which are about 30-35 quintals per hectare versus 70 quintals per hectare of traditional farming. And we have to think about these things. Protecting the environment is okay, but we need to produce wheat, especially at a time like this where the world population is increasing. So this is a bit of food for thought for everybody. Thank you.
Abbiamo anche presente l'assessorato ambiente.
Here, councillor for the Sardinia region. So I asked the engineer Cocco to tell us something, because agriculture and environment must live together. Thank you. Good evening. I will try to talk slowly. It's not something I'm used to, but I will try. The topics are many and are really complex, and this complexity, the word complex is the first word we should use. We are talking about a topic that is really complex, complexus, with knots, with intertwist. Complexity is it's a value, and we have to keep it in mind, because if we want to reflect on these themes, we have to put together many heads, many points of view, many visions, and I think this process is really doing that. The region, since many years, it's a long time, the region is developing sustainable strategy, one side, and on the other side, an adaptation to climate change. So both sides of the process, and to October 2021 for the sustainable development. It's like a fil rouge, and it's dealing with all regions in the program of environmental development, and it's in this program for the next years. What we have tried to do was to reflect in an integrated way. We were talking with people that were dealing with a Sardinia that was greener, more connected. This is about the Green Deal, and we were trying to reflect on the complexity. One of the main goals of the strategy for the sustainable development of the UNO is not to leave people behind. And this has to do with the care and responsibility. Our responsibility of the public administration, but it goes up to the citizen. I read something very interesting of Margaret Smith. She's an anthropologist. She's really well known, and I really love this sentence. I didn't know it. So when did the culture, when did the civilization happened? And she answered, the first time as we found a fragmented bone. I was expecting fire, or I don't know, like pottery, but it was a fragmented bone that was healed. And what does it mean? It means that if you break a bone and you can't find food, you can't find water, this means that somebody took care of you. Somebody recollected food, water for you, found a shelter for you, and you were cared for, and that's why you were saved. And you were saved because there was a community behind this, a community that was helping you. And this concept, this notion of community, to do something together, work together, so cogito ergo sum, from this to cogito ergo cum. So we are together. It's not just me, but we are together in a community, and each part of the society is working together in order to find a solution in a world that is developing, it's increasing, it's consuming 1 billion people every 12 years, and we are consuming resources. The only way to survive is to find new rules, adapting ourselves. The last thing I want to know is that the region has adopted an adaptation strategy. We didn't do it alone, but we did it with our scientific partners through projects with the EU, E.Life, as we were saying, and we were learning a job, and with our community, our scientific community, with the University of Sassari, with the University of Cagliari, we were writing a strategy that began to think about adaptability, climate change, and in this way we were building a framework for Sardinia for the future in order to do something that will last 400 years, something that is done with the vision of future. We need to understand what happens in the territory, and we are implementing these strategies. Now we have the instruments, we have the tools we need to put it through to the administration, the public administration, and we have to give these instruments to all people in the daily life. And we are using the resources of the region and also of the EU. Thank you very much. We have now here, before the entrepreneurs were asked to talk, I would like to hear the representatives of the 3 agencies that in Sardinia are dealing with water. We have Mauro Lorrai from the hydrographical district of Sardinia, and then we have Antonietta Dessena, Dr. Piras of E.N.A.S, Sardinia Public Water Authority, and then we have Maurizio of R.A.S, the Agency for Technical Support to the Sardinian government. So if we manage to hear Fabrizio Testa, I would ask him, I would give him the floor, because A.R.P.A.S is measuring the quality of the waters of Arborea, and from that we can work and we can begin to understand what we are talking about. Maurizio, are you there? We can't see him, so maybe Mauro Lorrai can talk now. Maurizio, are you there? Okay, can you tell us, can you explain us the situation about the nitrates in Arborea? Wait a moment.
Zoom, dal microfono di Zoom. Se vai nel microfono di Zoom. È collegato. Ah, è un telefono. Scusate questi inconvenienti tecnici. Allora magari intanto che facciamo il
So in the meantime, maybe we can hear E.N.A.S. talking about the situation of the water.
E.N.A.S comunque svolge anche dei progetti.
E.N.A.S is also developing some projects in Arborea, but you still are the agency for water.
Buonasera.
Good evening.
In effetti rispetto a un assessorato regionale, una direzione
Compared to a councillor,
operativo, siamo
we
un'agenzia delle acque
are just an
e quindi diciamo
operative
in qualche modo
branch, so we follow the rules of the region and what is planned by the agency, the district agency, and this is the pyramid, and we have the region, the agency, the councillor, and then there is E.N.A.S. E.N.A.S, also to go back to the theme of today, E.N.A.S is working in the planning, and this is the positive pathway, because if we plan adequately the resource, then we can say that we are pretty chilled for a short period at least. So this is the pathway that was developed during the years, and today we are in a good situation for the provision of water. And I'm talking about drinking water, irrigation and industrial uses of water. The irrigation system is the most sensitive, first of all in the summer, but luckily with the planning we were able to find solutions to the requests. And then we have the valorization of the resources. How did we manage it? We had the resource, it was available for us. We communicate with the municipalities and we develop activities that are positive in the ways we use water. Then we develop other activities. We are really busy also for fishery and sports events. And then we also focus on main good practices. And here in Arborea we are working with the local situation, and we had some fundings, and we could establish a plant in order to have fertilizers. The pathway was made easier thanks to the presence of people here, for example, the cooperative or the municipality of Arborea, that facilitate our activity. And we are having results that are really good, like clean fertilizers. We have a reduction of the groundwater pollution, and we think about industrial activities for the future, and we are studying it. So, being positive and have success is worth it. So now let's see if Maurizio is there. Can you try saying something?
Non ti sentiamo benissimo.
No, proprio noi siamo riusciti a sentire poco.
Non sta trasmettendo. Non sta trasmettendo.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Sì, niente, volevo solo dire che
I just wanted to say that it was pretty difficult to understand to hear, and we couldn't hear a lot of what you were saying. I can only say that
Aspetta Maurizio, scusa, se mi permetti, ti faccio una domanda molto precisa.
I just wanted to ask you something really prompt.
di Arborea.
What is the situation about the monitoring you are doing?
Sì, noi siamo, io personalmente sono sul campo ad Arborea dal primo
I'm working in Arborea since 2006, since 2003, and then 2006 we were monitoring the network. We have 29 monitoring systems and other 14 that are private. The situation we are dealing with after 2000 we had 120 and normally should be 50 grams per liter. In 2010-2013 the monitoring was effective and we had a decrease, a small decrease of the nitrate content, but then in 2014 and 2015 it increased another time and today they are constant. It's 90 milligrams per liter. What we are doing regarding the monitoring and the hydrological framework, we are working with the University of Cagliari and we are developing a study and we are trying to put together all information that we have about the area dealing with groundwater. And what I can say is that it's really interesting that the framework that was really simple, it's complex. So we see that the nitrate content is not easily modifiable, so there is a value, a main value that is high. Water is very low underground, in the underground. So what we are measuring has also some consequences. There are many differences. There are some areas where values are very low and nitrates are very low, other areas where they are very high, and other areas where they change over time. And we are focusing on this data. What we can say is that the presence of low nitrates goes with clay content. So we have clay clots that are absorbing nitrates. And this was what we recollected with the University of Cagliari.
Mi senti? Sì.
Sì?
Allora,
Maurizio, can you hear me?
una cosa molto
You
importante.
said something that's very important, that is that in the area of Arborea there are
in cui la concentrazione di
areas where the concentration of nitrates is normally low, and some others where it's very high, and others where it changes, it's variable. But what comes out of the analysis of the soil use is uniform throughout the municipal territory. So what you said at the end shows that the fact that some areas have low levels of nitrates means that those areas are affected by phenomena which purify the groundwater naturally, whereas in other areas this doesn't happen. We are convinced of this, we are sure of this. So as Alligadori, as a lawyer of this region, I like that we go beyond the monitoring and control. We try to understand more into details what the processes are which determine the natural depollution of the groundwater, because through nature-based solutions, or these nature-based solutions can be used to reduce pollution of the groundwater where it is polluted. And some time ago, in this territory, over 50 researchers came over to participate in the European Conference for Agroforestry, and they saw Arborea as an agroforestry system, a system that complies with the strictest criteria for agroecology, which are recommended by the European Union for a sustainable agriculture. Here, this already happens. There are some problems, of course, but the forestry system that exists here with the eucalyptus along the sides of the fields play a major role. And of course, I'm going to stop here because we could speak about this forever. But I saw the data, and there are situations of very high pollution, but also a spread situation or wide situation of lack of pollution. And this requires a special attention, which cannot take into account of the connection between the agroforestry practices, including the management of channels and wedges, and what happens underground. So as a lawyer of this session, I'd like to ask the agency for the regional environmental protection to discuss this, and I'd like to invite Agraria, because we're also talking about agriculture as well as chemistry. So I'd like this agency to analyze these processes into deep to help the territories, which is of course under stress, but which is showing that measures dictated by the European Union to reduce the pollution have been totally ineffective. And it's shown by the fact that nitrates didn't go down, despite all the attempts and the sacrifices made by the local farmers. So it is our duty as researchers and as agencies of the public administration to analyze this topic into details and find solutions. They've been partly presented to the remediation consortium, which unfortunately could be here, but these actions are can be implemented with limited resources. This has been discussed with the Regional Ministry for Agriculture, and we hope we can create a prototype of solutions which are based on nature and not based on concrete and chemistry, but based on nature, microorganisms that help improving the situation. I can say this, but we are 15 years after the implementation of the Nitrate Directive, and we still have nitrates. We have the duty to find solutions because this territory deserves. So at this point, I'd like to ask the last speech by Mario Lorrai, agency of the Water District of Sardinia. From your point of view, what is the situation like? Good afternoon, everybody. Unfortunately, I couldn't follow very much of what was said, but I am going to bring my thoughts. I work for the protection of water resources for the Water District, and I work for the planning and the monitoring together with the environmental agency for the region, and to acquire the data to draft the reports for the European Union. The situation has been clearly presented by Maurizio. We saw a decisive improvement of the measurements with the better data collected around 2011-2012, and then there has been a slow worsening of the situation, with the situation being generally stable. The situation changes from area to area, but in order to simplify the picture, I'd like to say that this is, let's say, the general situation. Also, considering this, I have to say that in the last few years, as far as I've seen, something positive happened, which is an increased exchange of information and skills and knowledge among the various stakeholders who work in the area of Arborea. There's a round table for informal work together with R.A.S, the cooperatives of the Arborea system. And this table launched a discussion to try and analyze more into details the situation, understand the causes that explain the variability that we observe, and to identify the processes at the basis of this variability, both in space and time. And I have to say that thanks also to the support we've received by the COPs and by A.R.P.A.S and by the university, we understood a little bit more of the system. Maurizio spoke about some aspects, why some areas even close to one another have levels of nitrates which are completely different. I think the clay layers at different depths of the underground that create a geochemical microenvironment. It is good that we understood this a little better. Moreover, currently there are some collaborations with the University of Cagliari and Sassari and with the remediation consortium itself. And this, of course, or we hope this could give us useful information to propose the decision makers the intervention measures which are ideal for the situation. And let's say that these collaborations have good strengths. Weaknesses I wouldn't know really. Probably the risk connected to the procedures for fines by the European Union. And this is the, let's say, the step before the infraction procedures. Because the measures implemented in various VZN in Italy are not producing the expected results. And so, and this, according to the Commission, goes for Arborea too. Together with R.A.S, we gave all the explanations and all the answers to the European Commission, and at this stage we are waiting for them to get back to us. And of course, depending on this, we'll have to work together to avoid more fines by the Commission. And we should try and anticipate and propose all the necessary measures towards the reduction of nitrates in this terrain. We have an oldish directive which has been overcome by other directives of the same sector, so we hope that the Commission will then take the directive in hand and change it and make it a little bit more modern, especially in its scientific approaches.
Grazie, dottor Lorrai.
Thank you, Mr. Lorrai. Why isn't the microphone working? I'd like to say that the interpretation that you gave regarding the geological aspects, so the clay layers, is very useful, but there are interpretation tools which take into account the processes and the biological processes in the management of soil that require another type of integrated approach. So I would like to invite you warmly to integrate the scientific knowledge of geological nature with the scientific knowledge that take into account the biological processes that happen underground. because gentrification is not a chemical process but a biological process that requires certain conditions to happen. Of course, clay is one of these, but it's not the only one. I don't want to talk about technical details. We may set aside some time to be clearer about this, but at this point I'd like to give the floor to the entrepreneurs. And first of all, I'd like to give the floor to Simonetta Milan. If present, is she here? No, she's not, unfortunately. So let's move on to the next speaker, Mr. Sebastiano Curreli, who is here, from the cooperative 3A, to take the floor and talk about the current situation from his point of view. Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me. I'd like to speak slowly and hopefully to reach results. Shall we say everything now? Actually, I thought about some things, but I learned some things in the meantime, so I'm going to change my agenda. I was thinking that I was saying that it's quite trendy to blame the war nowadays because the war creates crisis. And I'd like to say, and this is my first answer, I think the war stresses the endurance of certain systems. Of course, the Arborea system, meaning the Arborea's territory, has a character made visible through the landscape. Our territory is a rare example of a contamination between nature and culture. It's a complex system, as Mr. Cocco said earlier, and this complexity needs care, and that is why this territory needs care, because that's the interaction between nature and culture. This means that one of the strengths of Arborea is a social collaboration coming from the cooperatives and the geographical homogeneity. All these are good things, and the agreement among governmental bodies, agencies, the undergoing projects, the cooperation between the University of Cagliari and Sassari and the various agencies are all strengths which will help us solve the problems. As a weakness, I would say, and the war made it emerge in Italy and Europe. We went around looking for corn when we understood that the prices were going to skyrocket. But this shows these weaknesses, this weakness that is the little integration among supply chains, that is the farming chain, the production chain, and the agroforestry chain, the biomass chain, the biogas chain. All these exist in this land within the remediation area. And think about Bonifica Ferraresi, for instance, there are 1,000 hectares, and luckily the presidents of these consortia are discussing, have started to discuss. So how have we got here? How did we get here at this stage? I think this happened because we lost the sight of the agro-ecosystem. So when the chains are not synergic in their actions, I think the result is an imbalance in terms of nutrient management, production. We cannot ignore that the effluents cause problems, have some critical aspects, but to avoid a single cause determinism, I think we should go back, reanalyze our remediation in the light of the agro-ecosystem, that is raw material and energy, which are the two elements that are being undermined by the war. That is fodder on the one hand, self-sufficiency for agricultural produce on the one hand, and energy on the other. I think that from this point of view we are involving the activities of the producers co-op. So I'd like to invite the manager of the co-op to come.
Grazie.
Thank you.
Buonasera a tutti.
And good afternoon. I find myself on the other side of the barricade and I have to defend my class of producers. So, in the on the bench, politicians should be on the bench because they asked us to produce and to invest through regional plans. They asked us to increase the number of animals. Arborea gives work to 15 to 20,000 people. The nitrate directive was created in 1993, proposed by Scandinavian countries, and when they told us to invest, that happened between 1993 and 2005, and we were told you cannot produce that much because you are polluting groundwaters. They never supported us. They only supported us in other less profitable fields. What farmers do is not exactly right. I know that Arborea is close to the sea. There are many towns and villages in this territory, and we need to understand what they are doing in terms of waste water management and residues of other effluents. We were told you have to use 170 kilograms of nitrogen per year. This is a directive coming from Scandinavia, where they have a single culture. We have two cultures, or two crops. We have wheat, which represent one third of their needs in terms of nitrogen. They told us to use chemical products. You can, but you can't use organic. Probably, as you said, we need to find whether the nitrates come from animal farming or not. These are clear yet. There are studies from the geology department that say that it depends on the chemistry. Some others talk about organic causes. This is a territory that gives work to 12,000 people with a €3 million turnover in about 5,000 hectares. We have flower production, we have fishery, and so on. And when there are unreasonable situations, the entrepreneurs lose sight of their objectives and there is confusion. We are overwhelmed by irrational behaviors, and we here in Arborea are strongly committed to the environment, so we try to find reasonable solutions, but everything is connected to one problem. And as my colleague as the Minister for Agriculture said, is it reasonable that we pay 40 cents for 1 liter of milk and the great distribution sells it for 1.60? The large distribution sells or imports milk from countries where the cost of fertilizers is lower and there is no nitrate directives, and that is sold in competition with those who are sticking to the rules. Is it reasonable that in order to dispose of an animal we have to spend €600 and make 1,200 kilometers, whereas a live animal is worth 400, 500 euro, because we have no place to dispose animal carcasses at a regional level. So we lose, everything becomes really difficult for us, and it's difficult for us to find solutions. But thanks to research, through the collaboration with the various governmental bodies and the university, we decided to look for solutions, and I am sure and confident that we will find solutions soon and will turn critical problems into resources and opportunities. Earlier on, someone spoke about a very interesting project. The compost projects, and there are various projects we are working on, but we have to do it together with politics and politicians. We need to be supported by politics, especially in the red tape, because there are many funds, but it's often difficult to spend these funds for research. We have been saying so for 15 years, but things haven't changed, and I really hope that something will change soon.
Grazie Mauro Panetto, direttore della cooperativa produttori Arborea.
So the ecosystem is there. We are building it. Paolo Piras, are you here with us? No, he's not here. So I will give the floor to the last representative of the companies we visited, also Claudio, but he's not here. So we are developing many cooperatives, many companies. So we are trying to build many companies. There are different activities. Also, thanks to the help of university and to E.N.A.S, many people are developing projects for the cooperative of producers in order to produce innovation. So Enrico Costa is here to represent Bonifiche Ferrarese reclamation of Ferrara, and the influence in this territory is very big. So I would like to listen to what you think. Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Enrico Costa. Many people know me here. Like Professor Roggero was saying, I'm representing, and I want to give the witness of Bonifiche Ferrarese that since 2017 is here in the area and purchased the company S.B.S. and through a process that was difficult because we are representing in this district, in this farming district, we are representing one of the main weaknesses, talking about the hydrographical problems. So we are in an area that is very difficult. In the last 10 years, due to the climate change, we have verified that there is a problem, and we were underwater 4 times. This happened because the system has problems. It was quick fixed, but it's not surviving anymore. We had 40 centimeters of areas that were under problems. And we had a decreasing of the production of the fertility of these areas. So in this situation, our testimony, why should we speak? Because we know these difficulties, but nevertheless, we are trying to intervene in this area, as many people were saying before me, with an integration of the chains, of the fodder chain. So we are trying to cultivate leguminous vegetation in order to have a better fertilization in the soils. And then we are using, and this is something we are really developing, more than 12,000 hectares. We want to do that. I work with more than 10 people, and we are trying to reduce the impact of the manufacturing activities. We are trying to reduce the impact. We are trying to develop activities that allow to be more sustainable, also in the use of synthesized fertilizers. This year we were producing crops in Val di Chiana, in Emilia-Romagna, near Ferrara. We didn't use not even 1 kilo of chemical fertilizers. I'm the responsible person for the certification of the product. I had a visit of Legambiente in order to certify my chain, and the technician that came was really surprised because we didn't use not even 1 gram of chemical products, just manure that was organic. And we could reach very good results. And so this is my testimony to say that it's possible to do that. And if people don't are not used to think about it, but it's possible to be efficient, to have efficacy in and using these products. Our testimony, the importance of our testimony is this one. So we are trying to introduce some activities that must be sustainable for the environment. More than 50% of our surface is hydrological, and we are in an area that is not vulnerable. That is, our soils can only have 170 kilos of nitrogen, as if they were vulnerable. At the same time, we are verifying some issues for the water management. We have some issues in terms of water management. So I think I will stop here, and then we can continue afterwards. Thank you. So now, really fast, University of Cagliari, University of Sassari, I would like to give the floor to Giovanni Sisto Pireddu, who wants to speak. Giovanni, and then Atzori. And then we have a small coffee break, but there is a surprise before. I would like to be provocative. Arborea will have some issues if we don't change. Bonifica Ferraresi said something that was really clear. So why didn't you do it? If I can be provocative, if there was the possibility to buy those areas that now are areas of Bonifica Ferraresi, so it's a provocation. I'm sorry, but I wanted to talk freely, you know. I listen to many points of view, so and then I can be more provocative. War made urea really expensive. Did we need the war in order to use the urea in the soil? One of my friends told me, I give you money in order to reduce urea. And a person that's not here anymore, Professor Aru, more than 20 years ago, how many times did he say that? Can I tell the truth? Today we can reflect on it, but Professor Aru told us everything is artificial, everything is fake. Clay is here because it was put there, and more than 20 years ago he wrote that the pollution of this area comes from the usage of urea. And it was more than 20 years ago. Did something change? I don't know. We will see it. But I think we have to reflect also on the last years, on what happened during these years. Luckily, research is progressing. Some years ago, we published in one of the best papers that is not urea, that is polluting the aquifers. But then we can maybe talk about it later and deepen this theme. I introduce myself. I'm a sociologist. I work also with a group of E.N.A.S. I'm sorry to be so fast. I would like to talk about topical issue, that is how can we go from research to experiment? Our project MELIS is based on innovation processes and experimentation. One of the main problems of the agriculture are change processes. How do they happen in agriculture? Farmers in the history of agriculture are communities that are resilient. This resilience could develop agriculture, but this resilience is also the result of a resistant process to innovation and change. So innovation and change in agriculture, and this is proved from testimonies in the West and in the developing countries, we need an accompanying process, because innovation goes through experimentation, technology experimentation, but this is fundamental. The region Sardinia, in this aspect, I'm sorry to say it in front of the administration and the authorities, but Sardinia proved that it had a really bad experience. 30 years ago, we educated people in order to accompany change processes in agriculture. What have they been doing? They converted themselves into functionaries. They don't cultivate, they're not in agriculture, they are in their offices. And this is a main challenge, because in order to change, we need interdisciplinary progresses. What we are experimenting in the field, you have seen it this afternoon, can't be a good practice if we don't accompany it with a multidisciplinary activity. Thank you very much. So today hands are hurting. Yes, today 3 years ago the agriculture, the farmers in Arborea were really different. We're doing different things compared to what they're doing today. So be careful when you say that they are resistant to change, because they don't want to use urea. They have to do it because of the nitrates. So be careful. We are talking. We are developing a dialogue, but sociologists have to talk about sociology, and agriculture is about agriculture. I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm Alberto Atzori. I'm focusing on animal husbandry and bovine. So my introduction will be about observing how farmers are dealing with the system. So if we talk about the sustainability, we talk about performances. So how was the performances here? Farmers of the bovine chain in Arborea in Sardinia are competitive, so competitive as the ones all over the world. Performances have grown in the years, and in the last 10 years we had a reduction of 15% of greenhouse gases for each liter of milk produced. So if we link this to an environmental problem, it doesn't depend to each company, but on the area. If we are talking about the nitrate vulnerable zone and the directive, and we are talking about at the same time about the management of resources, we can see that the nitrate are observed, but if we are talking about the nitrate, there is already a problem, and we can have a business focus. And then on the other hand, we talk about the aquifers. So what is for sure a weakness is the lack of a quantifying of the territory that is not about the chain, the dairy chains, but also the dairy chain or the environmental area in general. Why should we manage the nutrition only of a single farm? So I think I'm not defending the producers, I'm just observing, but the farmers are doing the same that other farmers in Italy and in the world are doing. And I think it's a very virtuous activity in Italy. So how are the farms in Arborea and in Sardinia? The bovine chain is increasing, then we can talk about it later. But what happens is that from a family-run business, it is becoming more complex, and this will bring other choices, will conditioning the managing, the structure. But talking about what is critical, it's not a weakness, but this can be also an opportunity. That is this change from family-run business to complex realities. There are stables that are becoming more modern, and tomorrow maybe we can adapt those farms with regional aids. As we were talking before, this area is not resilient. It just adapted itself. It changed always. It modified itself always. And it is modifying itself also today. It will be modifying itself due to the climate change. Today, in these days, it is modifying it because of the warmth. And tomorrow it will change with infrastructure that will be better for the conditions of the animals, also due to the stress for the animals and the warmth. There are projects that we are developing for giving more tolerance because of the warmth, and I think this will continue in the future. So from this point of view, this system is robust, it's strong. And what does it mean that it is strong? It means that we have answers, and the territory is answering with developments, with good answers. And if it did it in the past, it will do it also with the nitrate problem. So, okay, thank you. Now, it's not a tradition of Arborea, but we have here a boy, a young guy, Fabio Piras. I thank him. He's playing launedas. I want to explain you a little bit. Launedas are an instrument of Sardinia, created in Sardinia, and now he will show you how the sound of launedas is. I don't know if you want to say something. I want to thank you. Thank you all for having me here, and I will play a typical dance of Sardinia.
Cosa vuol dire?
What does it mean? It's the name of the dance.
fresco e poi torniamo qui per la scuola.
to innovation. But I think this is not the case in Arborea, because farmers here in Arborea showed great ability to innovate and adapt. And this is also shown by the great technology that they've adopted, and which allowed to increase the yield of milk by 10-15%. I'd like to take the floor for a second. I wanted to respond to the provocation. I understand that provoking keeps the discussion alive and it's welcome, but I wanted to reply to the topics. I know we are guilty of a lot of things and it's no problem in recognizing, but the question was expected, but I've been living in this community for a while. And R.A.S, the company, since its acquisition by the region, was losing millions of euros every year. So it's only good that the politics decided to acquire it. But from our point of view as beef farmers, we had problems, economic problems. Our problems didn't start with the war in the Ukraine. Our income has been going down, and with the crisis in the last couple of years, we've reached unsustainable problems or economic situations. So I don't want to talk about people who are not here, but Professor Paci, Vice President of the region of Sardinia, controlled the acquisition of R.A.S. But the community wasn't ready for this step, also because from my point of view, as a beef farmer and a son of a colonist who came to Sardinia and remediated that land, and I'm really involved, but I want to say that that territory had been already paid by our sweat, so I found it inappropriate to ask for resources that had been already paid for. I think this is I understand this is only my point of view, but what is not acceptable is that Professor Paci did everything very quickly. I think he could have waited for Bonifica Ferraresi to acquire, and I don't think that their acquisition has changed the situation. I think he sold a piece of Sardinia to foreigners, and I think it was wrong for him to do that. And then you were talking about the amount of urea in your land, and you know our great weakness is to have little land for the amount of animals we have here, and that's a problem that's been here for a long time, and I think politics could have done something. I was part of a co-op, and we asked to be able to exploit land outside of our boundaries. Currently, we buy a lot of fodder for our animals. If we use less urea and taking for granted the correctness of the experiments carried out by Bonifica Ferraresi, we would lose fodder and we would have extra costs to buy extra fodder for us, and now the situation is unsustainable. I think we have a lot of strength and we'll talk about them during this evening. So thank you. Before starting the last phase of the discussion, to start looking forward, I'd like to summarize what has been said so far without mentioning who said what. I tried to summarize the points that emerged as a whole with the only aim of firing up the discussion from now on. We don't have to decide anything yet. I think we can say that as regards the situation for climate change, all private and public representatives agreed on the fact that climate change is worrisome and its effects are clear to everybody. I think there's a topic that we should think about, and it's that this awareness and the awareness of the fragility of the system and of the territory is visible even more during times of crisis, and it's difficult to understand this situation in advance, and this is an issue, but today we are aware. I think there's less agreement as to the causes of the fragility of the system and the difficulty in tackling this phenomenon. Very briefly, what are the problems that have come out? There is a general issue of the geological condition of the soil, of the territory, and probably the geological conformation of this soil shows some fragility or fragilities or some peculiarities vis-a-vis other territories. In this framework and from this point of view, we have to consider also that from a technical point of view, there's a complex and diversified picture, which of course requires diversified solutions. There's also a problem of space. The territory is limited, and therefore the difficulties in dividing this space to grant equal possibilities for everybody is of course a problem. And then there is the awareness. There's a difficulty in moving to action, and this is a crucial element because awareness is fundamental and it's key, but it's not enough even when the awareness regards a serious problem, and this was the case. This was not enough to move to action, to carry out adaptation actions. This has various reasons, among which there was, even in the past, there was a situation of social and economic crisis, and since it hadn't been tackled in the past, or it actually got worse because of the climate change. So this situation needs to be taken into account when planning for actions and measures. to solve the problem so that the crisis doesn't become even worse. So we're talking about the balance between environmental sustainability and economic sustainability. And then there is the issue of politics, because politics sometimes sounds or seems unreasonable, incoherent, and politics doesn't support the farmers in their difficulties. So politics that didn't integrate actions, didn't support the farmers in practical ways. And there is the need to support those tackling environmental problems. And then there is the old problem of bureaucracy and lack of integration among policies and among chains, which makes it even more difficult to intervene. And then there is the issue mentioned by Professor Roggero. That is, no changes are neutral or easy. There is the need of a cultural shift. Even radical changes are needed. So all changes need a preparation, especially a cultural preparation, a change of point of view. Environmental laws don't help, and they normally intervene ex post, whereas we are trying to work ex ante. But let's see the strengths. Some of them already exist. But let's see the second part. In the second part, we'll talk about perspectives. I think we need to interpret complexity as a value. We know that climate change is a complex problem, but complexity is also a value that should push towards collaboration, towards discussions and collaboration. And collaborating means that we should listen to each other and understand each other. The integration of policies on the one hand and the cooperative integrated approach of entrepreneurs is sought and hoped for. And then there is the strength of recognizing change as a drive, as a positive drive, which is challenging or can be challenging. And then the existence of good practices is good. It should be supported in its various forms. And then I'd like to close the list of strengths by mentioning someone who said that there is the trust in the ability to respond as a community. So there is a trust that an answer will be found and solutions will be found. And this is let's say, hope that I'd like to mention as last, so that it guides us for the coming discussions. Now let's move towards the future. Let's take a step towards the future. Let's talk about future perspectives. How do we see the future in our roles? in this territory. We are talking about this territory because this has become a case study both at a national and international level. And so the solutions that can be identified for this territory can have an impact in other areas in Italy, in the Mediterranean area. So what we should ask ourselves is what would we like? Let's dream. Let's be dreamers. And so let's try to imagine a time span of 10 to 20 years. So what will our starting point become in 10, 20 years? If we think about the fact that if we had made this exercise 20 years ago, we could have probably identified a different path to reach a more favorable situation today. So if we think about 20 years ago, in the notice, the nitrate directive was drafted, and probably now we could have done something different, but let's think about what we would like the situation to be in 10, 20 years to try and identify a path that could help us reach this common objective. So let's see if we see a common future or if we see different futures for Arborea. So, but this time I'd like to ask the entrepreneurs first. And since Mauro Panetto didn't take the floor in the first part, I'd like to invite him here. For those who live here, you all know him. And we saw him this morning too. Good afternoon. My name is Mauro Panetto. I am an agronomist, but I'm also a farmer. And my brothers and I have about 300 animals, of which 160 in production. And I'd like to take on the invitation of the professor. Managing a breeding farm means working 360 degrees because there are chains that integrate, and in such a farm there is the agronomist part, that is the production of the fodder, the buying of the seeds to get the best yield, and then there is the processing part that turns the raw material in products, animal products that are milk, meat, and so on. So the typical farmer from Arborea is a very specialized farmer because he has to know all these aspects which are key. So we have to know our past, and our friend Gianni Sardo mentioned about that. Our grandparents worked hard for the remediation, but we have been experimenting, which are bringing, or they are trying to bring, environmental sustainability without losing sight of our of the fact that our activity is an economic activity, so we can't forget economic sustainability. Our farms are family farms, so we need to make them profitable. So we are available as breeders breeders and farmers, and in the last 20 years, in collaboration with the regional bodies, I personally worked with Laura on a certain project for reducing phyto drugs. And my colleague Costa earlier on mentioned the distribution of organic-based fertilizers. They are distributed differently vis-à-vis 20 years ago. They are distributed with the irrigation water, and therefore that fertilizer improves its efficiency. This technique is almost obsolete nowadays, but it's innovative in respect to 20 years ago. And in the last 5-6 years ago, the Remediation Consortium, which is not here today, installed the meters in our water pipes, and so farmers know how much water they use. We are more and more responsible in the farm production. So pesticides and distribution of fertilizers, but we haven't lost sight of the production. Production has increased. We have increased the number of our animals 4 or 5 times. Our farm is self-sufficient from the fodder point of view, and it means that we produce everything that we feed our animals. So corn and wheat and oats that become fodder, the main source of feeding for our animals. These all made it possible for companies and farms to grow and look forward to the future. Of course, globalization brought us a competition with different realities, with lower production costs, so maybe energy is cheaper for others, but our meat is competitive. We are struggling this year, but in general and all in all, we are competitive. Our productions are competitive with the rest of Italy and Europe. And because we increased the efficiency of the processing of fodder into milk by our animals. In the 80s, there was a company from Grosseto that was taken as an example by all of us, and they produced 8,000 liters of milk every year. Now, on average, we produce 11 or 11,500 liters of milk per year. With the genetic improvement, the improvement of the animal management, and let's not forget, with the improvement of the animal well-being. This production doesn't mean that we exploit our animals. We have increased the well-being of our animals in our stables, where animals are in such conditions as to produce more, because if the animals are not well, they don't produce as much. So it's in our best interest to care for our animal, treat them well, so that they produce more. And there is another technology that we are introducing, which is the milking robot. And in Arborea, there are 18 out of 140 which have the milking robots. And this robot has taken the human role in identifying the animal and milking them. So the robot knows everything about the animal. And this, in our farm, but I think my colleagues can say the same, with about an increase of a kilo of dry matter to a 20% or 20% increase of the yield of the animals. So what we dream for the future, what I dream for the future, and we often talk as technicians and farmers, we want our job to be economically sustainable, that we respect the environment so that our sons and daughters will have the same level of environmental well-being, and that they can continue producing. What I hope is that the progress and the future has to be embraced altogether. And I think that here, where we have a lot of representatives from various sectors and with various roles, I don't think we should find a culprit or those who have taken a step back more than others, but we have to identify projects which are important for the territory, like the ones that were mentioned, the transformation of waste into resources, for instance. And this has been done, so what I hope is that we can keep working and dreaming, improve our workflows, improve our productions, and improve the quality of our environment. And I think our commitment is there. Probably we haven't done well enough, and the results say that we haven't been good enough, but we are more than available and more than ready to keep improving. We have improved a lot, and our American colleagues say that in 20 years' time we'll have dairy cows that will produce 5,000 liters more than today. So I really hope that Sardinia, even though it's just an island in the middle of the Mediterranean, can compete with our American colleagues. My dream is to the Sardinian and Italian producer competitive with colleagues from other continents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there somebody from the farmers that want to bring his witness, or do you agree with him, with his vision? Lino, Marco, I can give you the floor if you want. The approach we are changing according to this problem. Today it's a resource, it's not only a problem, and it's very essential. So if we change this approach, we will find a system to produce manure and to put it in the chain of fodder that will be used to produce milk. The milk will produce manure, and in many ways from the production with nitrogen or with vegetable waste or organic material, we can transform this manure. The cooperative is bringing up a project in order to use these leaks with systems and in order to transform it in fiber and manure. We can use that afterwards in our soils because our soils need organic material. So I hope in the future that Arborea will use these leeks, will produce these leeks because we need fodder, we need good milk, so we can have a circular economy that is always greener and sustainable. Thank you very much. So now the counselor, the environmental counselor, can come and share with us. So before we are listening, and Cocco can prepare himself. Gianluca, you owe me. So, since we have talked about the nitrate directive, it's correct to say that in Arborea, the farmers, the breeders, all have a plan of agricultural plan. If we want to talk about the next 10 years, from now on, we have to face the data about soils. Today's tables are producing a lot of data, and this data must be read in the correct way. And I say it because the plans for using the soils that every farm has to have are structured on a model of estimation and statistics. So what do? We say in this farm, according to the average of the last 10 years, for example, about raindrops, in this farm today we will have such a number of cubic meter of water, but you can't ask farmers, breeders to manage their plan, their agronomic plan on data that are just statistics, because if we want to be serious, and we have to be serious, they ask us to be serious, then we ask agencies to have plans, use plans that are real, not hypothetical. Because if a check has been doing, if a technician comes and checks, and then if we have raindrops, rainfall that are lower, then they ask me data that are not there. And they are not there because rains were not so common that year. So the estimation, the statistics are wrong. 1 year is more, 1 year is less. So this is what we are doing with the cooperative in Arborea, also with the help of University of Sassari with Professor Atzori. We are trying to, also with other people, we are trying to set a project, develop a project 16.5 in order to develop a project. Mitiga is the name, informative model of environmental management. For us, it's essential not only to know the data, but also to know the data according to the reality, the productive reality that we know. If we don't make this effort, we will have a knowledge of the farm that is not complete. It's not true that all farms in Arborea are the same. If you look at it, if you look at them, you say, yeah, they're the same, but since now I'm working there, they're all different. It's like us. Every one of us is different and stables are the same. It's a banality to understand them as they were all the same. We also have somebody that is not a farmer that here and maybe could share his vision. We need a voice out of the context. Luca Peterle from the nursery Peterle. Good evening, you all. I'm working in the nursery, so it's a bit different from agrotechnics. We are working in a nursery for watermelon and melons and courgette. How do I see the future? For example, we have in Holland and in Israel, we have two different types of agriculture. In Holland, as Mauro was saying, they produce 4 cubic meter. Israel was more intelligent. They produce less, but they respect the environment. Up to 10 years ago, in Holland, they would say not so many chemicals and pesticides, everything with robotics, and Israel was in a disadvantage. But then, when they entered the market, the people from Tunisia, Turkey, with lower prices than in Holland, then there were difficulties. And what did it emerge? The Israeli products and how, for example, Barilla, every day basil comes from Israel. Here it's with 0 emissions, there it's organic. So what happens? We use the basil and it's really organic. How is it possible? Basil in winter. Then we spoke with people, and what did they do? They made some plants. They knew the humidity, they knew the temperatures, so they closed the greenhouses. They put the basil to 46 degrees and the fungi dies. And then they open it without damages to the basil. So in the end they have a product that is 0 emissions in Israel, and in the US it's organic. So how could we do it here in Italy? It can't be organic because according to the EU there are many limitations. So let's focus on 0 emission products. So we begin 200 euro per cubic meter. Then we need a project. In March 2016, then it was developed in January 2022, after many years. After so many years, I don't want to do it anymore. So in my sector, it's progressing more than yours because we don't use leaks, we don't use organic derivation products. So we must understand what there is behind. Because when we say, like with Amazon, you buy something, after one day it's there, but okay, but you have to understand what it's behind, like who was carrying the product on Sunday. Sunday to your home. So I see the future like this, like Israel. Investments, huge amount of money invested. So policies like the supermarkets did. So I buy it in Tunisia and in Morocco, and then zero emissions. So in the milk, the organic consumers, I don't know if the statistical authority did it, but we asked to a supermarket, what does the buyer search in the product? First of all, quality. Second, the origin. Third, the price. So it's not only price. Things are changing. So it's not important what's inside, but where does a cow live? Where does it live? Maybe in a stable, in bad conditions. Then the consumer doesn't want the product. So, just a bit off topic. We have to turn page. I think we did a lot. I have a green T-shirt because of the nursery, but we have to do a lot. What we see in the animal husbandry, let's see the watermelon of Arborea. We were living there 20 years ago, and then the representatives of the region in 2022, we have to invest. Like, I'm 46. I don't want to do that now, but we are in a democracy, so decisions are really slow. We have to listen to everybody. But I don't know here if it's democracy or another thing. Thank you. So at this point I would listen to the councillor. And Agostino can prepare himself. So I arrived here running, and I have to admit that I arrived a bit not unprepared, because I know the themes of climate change. I know these topics: adaptability, sustainable, environmental sustainability. These are topics that I know pretty good, but I didn't see the outline, because it was a general outline. I don't know how from this general outline you can draw conclusions according to a theme that is really specific. And then we can come from the local to the global level. But something that I learned in these years is that adaptability comes from the local level. The more we are at the local level, the easier it is to adapt. It is more efficient if we are at the local level. So I'm curious about the conclusions, but I would like to remain in this aspect. I would like to give a vision of the future of the world's sustainability. I don't want to talk about nitrate or reclamation. I want to speak about sustainability, because sustainability is a precious word, but it has also weaknesses and strengths. Many weaknesses because it's used in a bad way. It is quoted. You can hear it in advertisements on television. But it's a word that is really enlightening, and on this word our future depends. Sustainability for me, for my vision, also if I use it alone by itself, it means to link environment, social aspects, economical aspects, and also authorities, governance. The governance institutions that can bring all this together. When we say lack of politics pushed us to encourage our regional strategy for adapting. We wouldn't have done it if we had a committee, if we had authorities that could pass orders through, that could issue orders and work on these topics. We did it. And when you begin at a local level, then you can put together many aspects. But sustainability, and I come back to the topic, it is a word that we have to respect, to care for, and we have to be very focused when we use it. There is a lot of brainwashing in everything, in declarations of politicians, technicians, in the businesses. Many things that are not sustainable then appear sustainable. But it is also true that on the other side we have producers, small businesses that from the concept of sustainability developed businesses with good incomes that can survive, that have chains, and that speak with other businesses. Because something we haven't said is that relationships are really important. The public administration, the third sector, university, businesses, citizens are systems that are interdependent. It is a word that doesn't exist in Italian. Interdependent means that each one is autonomous, but they work together, they build interconnections, they build networks in the area, and in this way they can have solutions. We have solutions when there are interconnection, when the networks are working together, because the knots can disappear, but if you are in the network, you are in the network because there is an interconnection, and that interconnection is the added value. And with that you can build responsibility. It is a way to behave with values of sustainability. And the last thing I want to say, the businesses have understood how it is useful to be sustainable, not only small businesses, but also big chains with investments in finance, environmental, social governance. With these investments, businesses were understanding that it is very important, and not because they are good. The big businesses are not good, but they work if there is convenience, if it is convenient, and they are they are focusing on sustainability because it is sure that that investment can work if it's sure. We have to reflect on this. I don't know how the future will be. I am optimist, but I understand that the pessimist sometimes is an optimist that knows many things. If you have all the information that are saying there is a climate change, there is a research of Wiseman of 2020 that is saying that everything that was worshipped by man in the history, all things weight more than biomass. And this is incredible because like 100 years ago it was not even one-tenth. So there was a rushing development. And I don't know if I can be optimist knowing this data, but what I know is that we have to work and to hope that the world can improve. We have to put together our efforts. And the public administration has to work as the first one. For the passion that you Agostino, now you've been called to intervene many times. You represent an institution. The future for Arborea, what do we see? Arborea represents is an excellence of Sardinian agriculture from the technological point of view, from the cultural point of view. It's way forward because one of the reasons why it happened is because this population was able to cooperate and to lose the individualism that negatively affects Sardinians. I think this has been one of the strengths to list. I think there is a lot to be done. Of course, there are environmental problems. When we spoke about them, we all heard that these problems need to be solved because they can turn into value added for this economy. We all know how one of the aspects considered by the consumers is the quality of the product before price, and quality means also its origin and its production mode. So overcoming the limit that currently exists in our productive system can give more added value to these productions. Arborea has its own intrinsic capacity to innovate, and it has it more than the rest of the Sardinian production. For instance, one of the Sardinian interventions has been used. 80% of it has been used in Arborea, and all the interventions aimed at introducing technical and technological innovations had its center in here in Arborea, and this is significant because the reality that has problems in keeping an economic and an environmental balance
but it's also a reality that believes in itself, that invests, that innovates, and I think this is a very, very positive aspect. There's a lot to do. Another obstacle to overcome is a certain reduction in the number of companies, because young people are no longer interested in becoming farmers, and of course there are economic problems faced by these companies, these farms. So the reality is extremely complex. I think that despite this, the entrepreneurial and social forces are here, and we can use this strength to go forward. And then, unfortunately, we have the red tape. And red tape is an enemy of companies, of businesses and farms. We analyze most of the applications for funds in agriculture with our agencies, and we are in a situation whereas the administration can't respond to the needs of society and of entrepreneurs. And responding to applications for funds in 4-6 years, of course, makes a difference, because technology changes in that time span, and after 4 years, what you wanted to do has become obsolete, and it makes no sense to invest in that. Or maybe the farmers have become older and you no longer feel like investing. So changing this should be one of the objectives of the regional politics, because without this, will always be too late. There's another aspect yet, which is a purely economic aspect. One thing is investing in 1 year, 2 years, and putting public money into the economy in a short time span. And a completely different thing is spreading those resources in a longer time span, because these resources get diluted and they cancel out the benefits that could have been achieved if things had been made in the right time span. Thank you. Now it's time for some launedas. Before playing, please explain to us how they work. And then the jury will give their opinion. This is a 100% Sardinian instrument. It is completely natural. It's made only by reeds, wax, beeswax, and thread. It's an instrument that could be found even in pieces of art 900 years BC, so it's almost 3,000 years old. And the only testimony of the nuragic culture that we can still listen to of the nuragic civilization. So I think it's one of the most interesting thing about this instrument is that it's so old and it belongs to the civilization of the nuraghi. It requires a circular breathing because in order to play it you need to breathe in from the nose while breathing out from the mouth, and this is a particular technique that is only employed in launeddas and in the didgeridoo, which is a traditional instrument of the Australian Aboriginals. So these two instruments are very different to one another, but they're close because of this circular breathing technique. It is also similar to the bagpipes, but whereas the bagpipes, the Scottish bagpipes and the Italian zampogne, the air reserve is in the bag made of skin. In here, our reserve is in our cheeks.
Io sto ancora andando da
I'm still studying with the master in Tuili, and I'm learning all the repertoire, and I'm also learning how to build them, because every player make their own, and also the reeds to make them are collected by their own players, and they can be found in the best area in Marmilla. The reeds are cut between January and February. There are two types. The Aronda donut. But then, of course, the Nuragic Launedas were probably different, but back then they also had the reeds. The reeds were already there. The bronze that showed the Launeda player can be seen at the Archaeological Museum in Cagliari. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to give the floor to Professor George Karatsas, who is a coordinator of the project Sustain Coast that you can see here and he's a professor of hydrology at the Polytechnic of Crete.
You can speak English and the translators will venite qui.
Collaborate with the scientists. As mentioned earlier, awareness exists, willingness exists, it's time to go to the action. And
buonasera a tutti, devo dire innanzitutto che sono molto sorpreso dall'apertura mentale degli agricoltori. È per la prima volta che vedo delle persone così intenzionate, con questa ottima volontà e così volenterosi di collaborare con gli scienziati. E una volta che c'è la consapevolezza e c'è la volontà, allora si può iniziare ad agire.
yeah, the thing is, like, I have been living in Crete, which is, I see, another Sardinia, a big island, maybe same size or a little bit smaller than Sardinia. And also I live 70 years at the state of Vermont in the United States, and also a farmers and agricultural state, you know. The problems are everywhere the same for the farmers. The same problems are facing everywhere. And it was mentioned here, it was given some emphasis regarding the climate change. That's an issue. You want to?
Io vengo da Creta, che è un'isola come la Sardegna, probabilmente anche delle stesse dimensioni, forse leggermente più piccola, ma ho vissuto 17 anni nello stato del Vermont, negli Stati Uniti, che è comunque uno stato agricolo, e mi rendo conto che i problemi degli agricoltori sono identici dappertutto. Ho sentito qua mettere molta enfasi sulla questione dei cambiamenti climatici.
And talking about the climate change, what are the worries? What is going to affect us? Mostly we're worried about the water. What is going to happen with the water? That's our main concern. And the water is also going to affect the pollution. The question is it time to go and work with some models and apply some models to predict the future scenarios? Is it time to talk with the farmers and the agriculturists and start using models in collaboration with the scientific community? Is it time we, the professors, to go out and collaborate with the farmers on an equal base, face-to-face on an equal base, not acting as a professor and a farmer, but as an equal. And if we find a level to communicate, then I think the benefits will be great.
Quindi ho sentito parlare dei cambiamenti climatici. Ovviamente la domanda è quali sono gli effetti che ci riguardano, che ci interessano. Sarà la questione dell'acqua probabilmente, perché che cosa succederà adesso con la scarsità d'acqua e anche per il fatto che l'acqua ovviamente ha poi delle conseguenze per quanto riguarda l'inquinamento. Quindi la domanda è, forse è arrivato il momento di iniziare a lavorare con dei modelli che riescono a fare delle previsioni di scenari futuri. Probabilmente è arrivato anche il momento per una collaborazione tra la comunità scientifica e gli agricoltori. La domanda che ci dobbiamo porre è questa: noi professori universitari dovremmo iniziare a collaborare con gli agricoltori su una base equa, una base paritaria, perché se troviamo un modo per collaborare, trovarci appunto sullo stesso livello, sicuramente questo porterà dei grandissimi benefici per tutti.
And this is what we are doing in this project, Sustain Coast, where we have 4 sites and we are doing the modeling, examining scenarios under climate changes. That is our main objective, not only to do the model, to see, but also to predict or to try to predict, we don't know, but at least we try to predict what is going on. And the only tool at this time on our hands are the model. The farmers, they don't have to learn the model. The farmers have to see the results. We don't have to spend time to teach the model to the farmers. We have to show to the farmers the results.
Ed è esattamente quello che noi stiamo cercando di fare con il progetto Sustain Coast, dove ci sono 4 paesi che collaborano e stiamo cercando di creare dei modelli che ci possano dare degli scenari di cambiamento climatico, e questo è il nostro obiettivo principale. Però non stiamo creando solo il modello, stiamo cercando anche di utilizzarlo per prevedere il futuro, almeno appunto ci stiamo provando. L'unico strumento che abbiamo a nostra disposizione adesso sono questi modelli. Ovviamente gli agricoltori non devono imparare a usarli, gli agricoltori devono solo iniziare a vedere i risultati che noi produciamo.
Also, it was mentioned, besides the climate change, it was mentioned that special emphasis was given to nitrate pollution. And this is a very important concern. The thing beside the pollution, all this stuff, is it time to start talking about legacy issues? The pollution or the levels that we have today, that is what we have done 20 or 30 years ago. And even if we stop using fertilizers, then for the rest 10, 50, 20 years we will still have pollution. So, is it time to start thinking, talking about legacy issues?
E un'altra questione che è stata discussa, ovviamente oltre alla questione del cambiamento climatico, è ho sentito che è stata posta una forte enfasi sull'inquinamento da nitrati, che è ovviamente una grandissima preoccupazione. E questo ovviamente riguarda l'inquinamento. C'è da chiedersi quindi, forse è arrivato il momento di parlare di questioni di eredità per il futuro, perché ovviamente i livelli di inquinamento che abbiamo oggi sono il prodotto di azioni di 20-30 anni fa, quindi se anche smettessimo oggi di utilizzare degli inquinanti avremo comunque altri 15-20 anni davanti a noi di presenza di inquinanti, quindi probabilmente è arrivato anche il momento di iniziare a parlare dell'eredità che noi lasciamo per il futuro.
And also, is it time to start doing substation management? For example, all the problems that we are facing, they have three components. One is the environmental problem, one is the economic problem, and the other is the social problem. And let's make it that clear. Like, for example, if we have in an area, let's say 100 wells, what is our objective to do the management? It's like to maximize pumping, okay? And that's in the economic aspect, okay? The more that I pump, the more that I will gain money. But at the same time, I can solve the problem taking into consideration some other aspect. Like I want the total pumping from all of the wells to be, let's say, greater than 1 million cubic meters per month, per week, whatever. That's the social part of the question, which means the social needs are this amount of water. And also we can say, okay, I can pump, but I don't want to see the groundwater level to go below 1 meter or 2 meters. We put the criteria. We put the guidelines where we want to see. And if we use this kind of approaches or any kind of decision support systems, things like that, I think these are going to be very important and are going to contribute to the management, to the substantial management.
E poi c'è anche una questione di gestione, perché quello di cui abbiamo parlato, poi tutti i problemi di cui parliamo, hanno effettivamente tre aspetti. Hanno un aspetto ambientale, un aspetto economico e un aspetto sociale. E ve lo illustro attraverso un esempio. Diciamo che in un'area ci sono 100 pozzi. Come facciamo a gestirla? Possiamo decidere di massimizzare l'estrazione, quindi più acqua estraiamo, più facciamo soldi, e questo ovviamente è l'approccio, diciamo, economico. Oppure si può provare a risolvere i problemi che abbiamo prendendo in considerazione vari aspetti. Per esempio possiamo decidere di estrarre solo 1 milione di metri cubi d'acqua da tutti i 100 pozzi nel giro di un mese, per esempio, e questo serve un approccio sociale perché prende in considerazione le esigenze sociali di una determinata area, quindi si estrae solo quello che è necessario per la società. Oppure si può decidere di non scendere sotto un determinato livello di faglia, per esempio 1 o 2 metri di falda, scusate, che è 1 o 2 metri. Quindi tutti questi approcci sono importanti, bisogna valutare, perché la decisione su quale approccio scegliere poi va a influire proprio sulla gestione delle risorse.
And also it was mentioned the role of politicians, the contribution. My experience, even in Greece, even in the United States, was that the farmers are very important to the politicians, but the politicians remember the farmers a month before the election. So try to make your own, to find your own solution and don't rely on the politicians.
E poi ho sentito che parlato anche del contributo dei politici. Io ho visto che la situazione in Grecia e negli Stati Uniti praticamente, per la mia esperienza, è esattamente lo stesso, cioè che per gli agricoltori i politici sono molto importanti, i politici invece si ricordano degli agricoltori solo in periodo di elezioni. E quindi quello che vi direi è cercate di fare le vostre scelte, di capire che cosa va bene per voi, che cosa funziona, senza pensare ai politici.
Well, okay, with these open-minded people here, I think Arborea can go very fast to a substantial solution, and you can have a future that is going to be much better of whatever happens today. Actually, as I said, I'm surprised because when we started this sustained cost project, and I tried to approach the farmers in my area, it was like, why do you want to do that project? We don't need you. And I said, what is the problem? They said, you are going to close all the wells. I'm not going to close all the wells. As I said, we cannot close, we have social criteria, we have environmental criteria, and we have economic criteria. You cannot go to an area, and if there are 100 wells, you say you close all the wells. So it took us like maybe 6-7 months with continuous contact until now we became friends, and they said come over and we can discuss and things like that. But here in Arborea, I think people are ready to accept a new solution. Thank you very much.
Vorrei concludere dicendo che qui ad Arborea ho trovato persone con una mentalità molto aperta e sono sicura che con questo tipo di approccio sia possibile trovare delle soluzioni sostanziali per un futuro che sarà sicuramente molto migliore di oggi. E sono rimasto molto sorpreso perché quando abbiamo iniziato a lavorare col progetto Sustain Coast andavamo a parlare con gli agricoltori, la loro reazione iniziale era non vi vogliamo, non ci servite. Non abbiamo bisogno di voi perché voi venite qua e ci chiudete tutti i pozzi, e ovviamente noi abbiamo cercato di spiegare loro che avremmo utilizzato dei criteri sociali, dei criteri economici, dei criteri ambientali, quindi ovviamente non è che si va in un'area e si chiudono tutti i pozzi, però nel giro di 6-7 mesi siamo riusciti, diciamo, ad approcciarli, hanno capito il lavoro che volevamo fare e hanno visto che abbiamo portato dei contributi, e quindi siamo diventati amici, ma io credo che qua ad Arborea si parta già da una situazione molto avvantaggiata, e quindi credo che le persone siano pronte al cambiamento.
Allora, l'ora si è fatta tanta e allora provo a dare anch'io due conclusioni molto più rapide in realtà, ma diciamo anche un po' della procedura, ma non dal punto di vista formale.
Try to draw some conclusions. We have two considerations, so we begin saying that if there is a conflict, how can we manage it, how can we go forward? So I will try to draw some conclusions that are suggestions in the end. I think we can say that from what emerged, we can say that we are agreeing about a change. We agree that a change is needed, and maybe from this point of view we don't really have a proper conflict in general, so it's necessary to act in the adaptation of the problem, a problem that all people know. Of course, there are many visions on how to intervene, on how to act, but we have to go in this direction, the direction that we have gone until now, but it was not sufficient in the past. Then I want to draw another conclusion that comes from what you said. Maybe the difficulties that you found also in the adaptability, adaptation, how you come to adaptation, and maybe a radical adaptation. So at the beginning we said there is a conflict between ways of life, models. So maybe we should evaluate the changes of needs, ways of life. If we had more sustainable ways of life, maybe this would help in order to adapt everything. We had limitations to change, to growth, and these are all linked to adaptation. If the problem grows, also the adaptation changes, but I think this is the pathway that Arborea wants to work. And another important aspect is the desire and need of to be accompanied in this change. And I can sum up in these terms. It is necessary, as in all cases, to have a support, an economical bureaucracy support, also the modifying of the laws, but maybe we need some cultural support, that is studies, research. All these can help to understand the phenomena better and the risks that we have, that we are facing. And also educational pathways, education of the, like some of the people that were talking gave the possibility to have a contribution that is really important. So in order to support and have a constant support, because ideas, techniques are improving in the time, and also listening one to one another is important. As it emerged, and this was, like all people were saying, that changes must come not from people but with people, like all together. We have to change all together, considering all actors. And here I'm borrowing a word, the interdependence. All subjects that have a role, have different needs, different abilities, but have in the end the same perspectives or interconnected perspectives. So we have to walk this path together, and I think this change goes beyond the conflict. This change must be undertaken and can be helped through procedures of listening, of coexistence, of listening to one another, procedures where everyone can express themselves. And I deal with mediation, and I understand that each of us is prepared and knows his sector, but maybe we are not used to talk with other people and to share our vision, to listen to other people. So understand, listen to other people, put ourselves in the shoes of other people, experimenting all these passages. I think this is important, in also to go out of the places, the safe places where we are. Each of us is working and is working in his sector, but if we listen to other people, the needs of other people, it's very interesting to understand the other better. So go beyond our roles, it's important. And I wanted to finish with my last consideration. We could develop also this pathway with politics, participating in the decisions, in the decision making, in the management of environmental policy. This could help and could increase the awareness, because everyone is aware of climate change, of the damages of climate change, but each of us knows his situation better, but to understand the complexity can be useful, and listen and talk together. This could also give a vision, because we talked about dreams, but I think the dream is necessary, and we must begin to do this exercise. But the vision that emerged partially, it's a necessity that we have, that is, go beyond our role, go beyond our time, our vision, our small vision to do what we have to do. We are in a situation where we have to have a larger vision, not only relating to politics, jobs, but we need a bigger vision, open to all possibilities. So I hope this small experiment can help us to support and to have ideas, suggestions. And my suggestion is to have visions, to have dreams that are alternative, exaggerated, to experiment them. And that a small stone can also, if it's small, be an example. So that also a small thing can be an example. Thank you. Veronica Dini will be with us for 3 days. We have a summer school that we have in Oristano for conflict mediation. Many of the people that are here are participating, and the goal is to fuel this ability to put together many perspectives in order to solve and tackle complex issues like climate change adaptability. So I thank you very much for being with us here and to open a new space that can be useful for the future, not only for water, nitrate, and we are talking about these themes. Thank you very much that you kept up and you are still here. I hope we can replicate this experience also in the future. Thank you very much. It's a reality that in Sardinia, in this context, it would be not the same not to have it. So the fact that we are here discussing these topics, it's an example for not only Sardinia, but maybe also for other realities. Thank you very much to you all. Everything was recorded and can be viewed on YouTube. Projects are going forward. We are available. There are other colleagues that came from Sassari and Cagliari. We put our efforts. We want to help. We want to support this reality, this context, also climate changes. Thank you very much.